The Pentagon admits that it overvalued military aid that was sent to Ukraine. But hey, good news everybody! That means we can send 6.2 billion with a B more to Ukraine. We'll be talking about what that means, how much that could be back in the hands of US taxpayers, and what we do from there. In other news, a banging sound is heard under the ocean, near the site where the submersible was lost at sea. So, do we have hope? Could we actually do this? We're running short on time, so we will see what happens with that and where that goes. Adam Schiff is officially censured, while Marjorie Taylor Greene calls Lauren Boebert a little bitch. I know that Mogwai is going to be interested on that one, so we'll be talking about that and what's happening there. And a federal judge strikes down Arkansas's ban on gender affirming care. It is going to be all of this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got a ton of stuff to go over here today. Not as much, and again, not a lot of new stuff on the news. We've still got some of our catch-up stuff from earlier on in the stream, but we'll go over a lot of that and more. We're going to talk about... we've got an extended economy segment here because not only do we see our regular layoffs report, which I actually don't know if that is going to... oh, maybe we won't be able to use that as our regular layoffs report because, looks like the archiver decided to take a crap right in the middle of trying to archive that. That's okay. I've got a different layoffs report that we can use for that as well, but we have some extended finance today. We will see what's happening with that. The Pentagon just, whoops, we lost $6.2 billion in an accounting error. Hey, guess we better go send that out to another nation. So we'll be talking about that and what's happening there. The Titan, we've got more updates on that saga, but unfortunately, tomorrow is probably going to be the last day that we can talk about that one. So we'll go over some of what's happening there, what we do with that. Greta Thunberg is in the news. She got lambasted for deleting predictions of climate change, so we'll be talking a bit about that. And, yeah, some of the catch-up from as well. We've got a lot to go over here today, so we're going to get started. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, and Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine. Go check out all that great programming as we aim to bring you a better news experience from the common man for the common man. That is right. Stop getting your news from people who wear suits that cost more than your houses, the people that hate you, and get your news from people who are just like you, people who are quite awesome as well. All right, let's get down into it. Let's get started. Let's talk about what's going on in the news for the day. And we're going to start with our finance segment, as we always do. Well, the first thing that we see is this was supposed to be the layoffs report, and it looks like the archiver is having issues again. Everything else that I tried to archive today archived, but this one just decided it's going to go. That's okay. We can move on without that one here, but we will look at the Dow today. So I did figure out, by the way, what is happening with this straight line across on trading. That is what the futures are doing. I didn't realize that at first because, and looking at where the clock stops at, actually, that's what pointed it back out to me because, you know, I'm not looking at this until 5 o'clock Central Time, which means that the markets have been closed. So right now it looks like the futures are flat based on what is closed, but looking through the trading on the day, the markets dumped off and then tried to rally their way back before dumping off again tried to rally back, and then dumped off again. Some of the sentiment is given by the fact that the Fed is saying that they're going to go to 5.25 to 5.5 for the next rate hike. So we will be seeing what's happening with that and what effects that takes. As we go looking at your Bitcoin, which was a winning day today, Bitcoin is approaching 30,000, and it actually crested above 30,000 briefly throughout the day before dropping back down below the 30,000 mark to 29,933.10. that is up 1,573 US dollars and 90 US cents, or another 5% gain on your Bitcoin today, with it being up almost 6% at one point today. So those of you who have Bitcoin in your portfolio, you are winning. I don't have enough Bitcoin to make it a part of my portfolio, but yeah, they're winning as well. I'm actually probably going to talk with my 401k advisor. This is not official financial advice, and see what he or she, because I don't have one specific yet, I don't know who it's going to be, but I will find a 401k advisor and say, hey, can we put some of this into Bitcoin? Check with your financial advisor to see what is best for you and your financial situation. Always, this is not official financial advice. Looking in at the gas prices in the Madison area. Remember, these gas prices do not reflect your local region, your local gas prices. Check your local listings, but your pattern should stay somewhat similar to what we see here. And we still see a steadiness here. That little bit of drop that we had over on the east side of Madison stayed with us, thankfully. A little bit of reprieve over there. The west side remains at 340 on average. So we are approaching the 4th of July weekend, seeing gas prices stagnant. I can't say down. I mean, yes, they're down from the $5 a gallon average that we saw just a little bit ago, but they are staying stagnant, so that's what we see coming from that. Let's grab one from CNBC talking about your markets today. Stock futures are flat after a 3-day losing streak from Yoon Lee. Futures were flat in overnight trading on Wednesday after the market suffered 3 consecutive days of declines as the tech-powered rally faded. Futures on the Dow rose 24 points. The S&P and NASDAQ were both little changed. The rally appeared to decelerate this week as all 3 major averages fell 3 days in a row. The S&P slid 0.5 on Wednesday, marking its worst performance in June. The equity benchmark is now down 1% week to date, on pace to break a 5-week win streak. The tech-heavy NASDAQ composite fell 1.2%, suffering its worst daily performance since June 7th. Big winner in artificial intelligence, AMD dropped 5.7% on Wednesday, while Intel retreated 6%. The Dow slipped 0.3%. Wednesday's decline came as the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said more rate hikes are likely ahead to combat inflation, pouring cold water on investors who had hoped the central bank was close to the end of its tightening cycle. Powell said lowering the inflation has a long way to go and could very well mean that they won't stop until the fall, said Edward Moya, senior market analyst at Awanda. If other central banks seem poised to deliver more than a couple rate hikes, that might make it easier for the Fed to remain aggressive with tightening. The Fed kept rates steady at last week's policy meeting after 10 consecutive hikes. However, officials indicated there could be 2 more quarter percentage point increases this year. Powell will deliver his semi-annual monetary policy report to the Senate Banking Committee on Thursday morning. Investors will look for further comments on inflation and interest rates. Investors will also monitor weekly jobless claims Thursday morning, which is expected to show a total of 256,000, according to economists polled by Dow Jones. So that is what we are seeing coming off of that. Some things to look at with this. Now, again, the Biden admin right now is trying to tell you that the economy is chugging along and doing fantastically, best economy in years, because we're only at 4% inflation compared to last year's 9%. What the Biden economy and the Biden babies will never ever tell you is that this is 4% on top of 9.1%. We are approaching last year's peak. At this point, July was, I think, the peak month, and that was at 9.5, I think, was where the peak was. I'd have to go back and look again to see what's happening with that. That 4% that we have, which is usually considered to be high inflation already, is on top of the 9.1. So our economy and our inflation is not under control, as much as the Biden administration would like to tell you. I don't know where Jerome Powell is trying to go with this. I would not be surprised to find out that he is attempting to go to negative inflation to combat what happened over the first year of the Biden admin, which would be really detrimental to the housing market, to the food market, and to the labor market. It would do really good on prices, but at what cost? We're getting to a point where there's got to be a cost analysis to this as well. And I don't think Powell is going through that. I do legitimately believe that he is attempting to pull us into negative inflation, at least partially, to combat some of the 9.1% that we saw last year. But I don't think it's going to turn out well for him. I think he can get there, But I think we're going to hit 15 to 20% unemployment briefly if he does. And that is going to cause riots in the streets. So we will see what is happening with that and where this goes. $2 billion? You mean $6.2 billion, Mogwai? We have our article that never seemed to materialize, so we will look at the layoffs report for that. Warner Media, by the way, is the one who was on deck for that. But let's talk just a little bit more about finance here. I got a couple more talking about this. Why it's becoming harder and more expensive to get homeowners insurance. Well, because the cost of repairing everything the homeowners insurance covers is going up. I don't know if that's what CNN is going to tell us, but that's the reason. From Chris Isidore and Ella Nilsson. Homeowners insurance is becoming more expensive and in many places more difficult to find. There's no sign of the situation is going to get any better anytime soon. The culprits, and CNN coming out here to try to blame everything but what's actually going on here. Climate change. Oh, well, they do have some of what's actually happening here. Rising costs to rebuild or make repairs, and a sharp increase in the premiums from reinsurance companies that are used by insurers to limit their risks. Major insurance companies have already virtually pulled out of the Florida market, leaving homeowners paying premiums nearly 4 times higher than those paid elsewhere in the country. Hurricane risk is part of Florida's problem. Hurricane Ian last year was the most expensive storm ever to hit the state. Partially fueled by inflation, by the way, but Florida is not the only state where natural disasters are causing insurers to pull back from the market. 2 of the largest insurers, State Farm and Allstate, are no longer writing new homeowners policies in California, partially because of the increased risk posed to homes by wildfires, and there's a lot more going on with that too, especially given the fact that California has been so lax on prosecuting crime. That's a big part of the reason your homeowners insurance is going up. Climate isn't the only factor. Insurance companies also point to the rising costs of replacing homes as inflation for building supplies and labor has soared. The companies also blame limits placed on insurance premiums in some states, including California. Well, would you look at that? When California says you're not allowed to charge enough to cover your losses, then you start to lose money. Said a statement from Allstate explaining its decision to stop writing new policies last fall. The insurance industry says that rebuilding and replacement costs surged 55% between 2019 and 2022. In reinsurance, the type of insurance that used by insurers to limit their risks has gone up between 30 and 40% after years of losses in the industry, according to Matt Carletti, an insurance industry analyst for JMP Securities. If you are a reinsurer, you have lost money over the last 5 years, said Carletti. They've had enough, and for good reason. The increased frequency of natural disasters is a major factor driving insurers to pull out of some markets and for reinsurers to raise their rates, which affects premiums everyone pays, according to the experts. Well, you can also realize the fact that we are worshiping Moloch in our society, and I don't want to come out and say that it's plagues straight out because, number one, I know that God gave us the rainbow to make sure that we knew the covenant that he would never flood the world again. But, not too long after that, when Moses said, "Let my people go," we saw some things. And Charlton Heston acted some of those out many, many, many years later. So, I don't want to say some of the stuff is happening because God is pissed. But I will say that I've been saying an extra prayer lately. So that is what we have for that. I love how the fact that climate change is supposed to be the leading risk when building materials have gone up 55%. All right. Our new layoffs report, because we lost our other one, Bed Bath & Beyond and Party City store closings this month. So, and typically when your stores close, your job goes with them, from Danielle Genovese. The days of shopping the aisles of Bed Bath & Beyond and some Party City locations are coming to an end. Bed Bath & Beyond told Fox Business in a statement on Monday that it anticipates closing all Bed Bath & Beyond and Bye Baby stores across the country by June 30th, as it continues to wind down operations as part of a restructuring effort. This does not change our dual-track processes as we simultaneously continue pursuit of a sale for some or all of the company's assets, the company said in a statement. Stores included under a potential transaction could remain open and operational beyond previously announced closing dates pending the outcome of an ongoing sale process. The beleaguered retailer, founded in '71 and once seen as a retail powerhouse, filed for Chapter 11 in April after suffering from mounting losses and several failed attempts to turn around its business. In the meantime, the company said 360 Bed Bath & Beyond stores, 100 Bye Baby stores, and its websites will remain open to serve customers as store closing sales, which kicked off on April 26, continue. Meanwhile, some Party City customers are in a similar boat. The company, known for its vast selection of party supplies and holiday costumes, filed for bankruptcy in January following lagging sales and plans to re-emerge as a private company. A&G Real Estate Partners, the real estate advisor to Party City Holdco Incorporated, started auctioning off some of the company's leases as part of its expedited financial restructuring process since the beginning of the new year. Those are all going to be Spirit Halloween stores by the end of the year. And again, all those jobs are going to go with them. And one last one, just to give you an idea on where the economy is. As much as the Biden admin tries to tell you that it's trucking along, from the Hill, an average American income may no longer cut it. From Daniel DeVise, an average American income isn't enough for comfortable living in 2023, according to two recent reports. A typical U.S. family earns about $71,000 per year, according to the census, yet the average American believes the family needs at least $85,000 in annual household income to get by, according to a recent Gallup poll. That finding tracks with a recent study from Smart Asset, a financial technology company, which found the average American worker needs about $68,499 in after-tax income to live comfortably. That works out to around $85,000 in total income, assuming a 20% tax hit. And that's just for one person. The two releases point to the same conclusion. Many Americans earn too little in 2023 to attain a decent standard of living in their communities. Hey, but don't worry. Hey, you're getting that pay raise. I'm giving you the best economy you've ever had, man. American households are feeling the pinch after 3 years of relentless economic headwinds. Inflation, a negligible factor in recent years, bullshit, surged to 5% in 2020. Okay, so they're talking recent years before this. Surged to 5% in 2021 and 8% in 2022. 9.1% Hill, and now stands at 6% according to federal data for the first quarters of 2022 and 2023. Rising prices prompted an unprecedented run of interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve, lifting the benchmark federal funds rate from effectively 0 to around 5% in a little over a year. All of this comes amid the Pinko-Pox pandemic, which pushed the nation's jobless rate close to 15% at the height of the national lockdown in 2022. We're just coming out of this really unusual time when we had pandemic scarcity, we had a loss of work, and I think it sort of distorted perceptions about the cost of living, said Peter C. Earle, an economist at the American Institute for Economy Research. Lockdowns were sort of an existential experience for a lot of people. The Gallup poll taken in April found that 30% of Americans believe a family needs a six-figure income to get by in our community. Yeah, we're getting there. Only 14% of respondents said a household could make do on less than $50,000, and even that threshold is $20,000 higher than the federal poverty line. For a family of four, $30,000. I think the real crux of the issue is, what does it mean to quote-unquote get by, said Doug Holtz-Eakin, an economist and president of the American Action Forum, a conservative think tank. Lower-income families earning less than $40,000 a year told Gallup pollsters a household needs $66,310 a year to get by. On average, upper-income households earning $100,000 or more said nothing short of $100,000 would suffice. There's lots of other data that says people whose incomes are relatively high are living paycheck to paycheck. Holtz, Eakin said. I can attest to that, by the way. 10 years ago, in an earlier Gallup poll, the average American believed a household could get by on $58,000 a year. That number exceeded the median household income at the time, $52,250. The gap seems to be growing between what Americans earn and what they consider a sufficient income. That's because everything that they buy has become more expensive. The Gallup figure from 2013, $58K, was about 10% higher than the median household income for that year. The 2023 Gallup figure, $85,000, exceeds the current median income by about 20%. But don't worry, everything is fantastic. Everything is great. I went to Quick Trip yesterday for lunch. I don't usually eat lunch, but I have been lately because I think some of it's the humidity and some of it is my body's been going into ketosis quicker because I stay on keto, but I eat normally during the weekends. So I like regular carbs, things like that. I have sweet stuff and whatnot during the weekend. But I went because I was so hungry by the time lunchtime came around yesterday. I ran over to our local Quick Trip and grabbed 3 hot dogs, no bun, and a jar of Tostitos cheese sauce. High in fat, low in carbs, so I could have something to eat over the lunch period. $15. And I didn't get anything to drink with it. $15 for that. Because the hot dogs were almost $3 by themselves. They were big hot dogs, but still. $15. That was like a $5 lunch before the pandemic. $15 for a lunch. Let that sink in. And one thing that I can come out and say is, I mean, I jumped my income from, I don't want to give a lot of numbers, but I jumped my income from 40K to 52K when I made my move. And I don't feel like I'm any better off than what I was. I am a little bit better off because in my mind, I'm still spending like I was working at my last job, where I just didn't quite have enough to make it. And some of that did come from the fact that the move was way more expensive than I anticipated it was going to be. That played a big role into this too. But I'm looking at, I'm just looking at the way things are going. And I make I have money left over at the end of the week, but it's, given the fact that I've gone up by this much every month, it's unfathomable, the fact that I still have to sit back and check my bank account every time I go grocery shopping, even though I know that I'm fine. Whereas in what the hell year did I start at my last job? 2015. When I moved up to the upper end of 30,000 for the first time in my life. 37,000 was what I made the first year at my last job. And then I got some steady raises that went along with that. That was a huge amount of money to me at the time. And I was doing really, really well. Even when I was at the point where I was having a massive commute to work, I was still doing really well on 37,000. And just as raises went up and I got to 40K, I was still doing really, really well, and everything was coming out and turning out well. But then just steadily it started to go less and less far. So that is where we are at for that. And yeah, the average family needs 85K to make it, owning a house, having the American dream right now. I believe that. Hell, sometimes there's a part of me that just wants to get hitched so I can share that income. 2 paychecks are better than 1. Going through the big D and don't mean Dallas. That'll be my life somewhere in the future. All right. That's finance. What do? Spend 26 minutes talking just about finance? Let's talk about our government's finance. Mogwai says 3 hot dogs in the buns is one of Lindsey Graham's favorites. Lindsey Graham. From the Associated Press today, Pentagon accounting error provides an extra $6.2 billion for Ukrainian military aid. From Lolita C. Baldor and Tara Kopp. The Pentagon said Tuesday that it overestimated the value of the weapons it has sent to the Ukraine by $6.2 billion over the past 2 years. About double early estimates, resulting in a surplus that will be used for future security packages. But the amount of weapons is exactly the same. Pentagon spokeswoman Sabrina Singh said a detailed review of the accounting error found the military services used replacement cost, rather than the book value of equipment that was pulled from Pentagon stocks and sent to Ukraine. She said the final calculation shows there was an error of $3.6 billion in the current fiscal year and $2.6 billion in the 2022 fiscal year, which ended last September 30th. As a result, the department now has an additional money in its coffers to use to support Ukraine as it pursues its counteroffensive against Russia. And it comes as the fiscal year is wrapping up and congressional funding was beginning to dwindle. It's just going to go back to the pot of money that we've allocated for the future Pentagon stock drawdown, said Singh. I can think of a lot better things that you could do with this money. The revelation comes as Ukraine moves ahead with the early stages of its counteroffensive in an effort to dislodge the Kremlin's forces from the territory they've occupied since a full-scale invasion in February 2022. The counteroffensive has come up against heavily mined terrain and reinforced defensive fortifications, according to Valery Zaluzhny, the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces. Russia, meanwhile, has been bombarding the Kiev region with dozens of Shahed exploding drones in an assault that exposed gaps in the country's air protection. After almost 16 months of war, officials said Ukrainian air defenses downed 32 of 35 drones that were launched by Russia early on Tuesday. I don't believe that. The Pentagon has repeatedly used presidential drawdown authority to pull weapons, ammunition, and other equipment off the shelf so it can get to Ukraine far more quickly than going through a purchase process. And then Raytheon comes back and sells new armaments, jets, missiles, ammunition, weapons, etc., to the Pentagon at a premium that goes into the pockets of the people who have stock in Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, etc. Based on previous estimates announced June 13th, the U.S. had committed more than $40 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since Russia was invaded. Using the new calculation, the U.S. has actually provided less than $34 billion in aid. Officials have not been able to give exact totals for the amount of money that remains for the drawdowns for Ukraine's Security Assistance Initiative, which provides longer-term funding to purchase weapons, including some of the larger air defense systems. So this article is a little bit misleading as far as what all this means. This all comes out to be basically a balance sheet. And there are now $6.2 billion extra dollars on the balance sheet because of the calculation of what it was that was being sent over there, which is going to turn around and be funneled back into Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, etc. Because they have that extra sitting out of the balance sheet. There's not actually cash in the Pentagon to go back out. Like, there's not a stack of $6.2 billion bills there. But if there was, or if the government decided to come back out and look at this and say this is a budget surplus, I did some calculations, and we watched the video about this yesterday. I did some calculations about this. So, how I came into my work, I used the old Google machine, and found that we have about 168 million individual tax returns filed this past year. Give or take, that means 168 million taxpayers in the most simplified sense. The number is actually going to be probably a little lower than that. I would say in full actuality, it would probably be closer to 165 million based on some of the tax code and some of the ways that taxes and individual returns are done and redone. So we'll say 165 million taxpayers. But I did the calculation based on 168. If this were to go, just this accounting error, rounding up, 6.2 billion into 168 million people is $36.90 per taxpayer, $80 a household. It's not huge numbers. Definitely not. It would probably cost almost that to get the checks printed out and mailed out. I wouldn't even say it would be that much. But if this were to be cash, taken as a surplus, that the government didn't need, number one, first and foremost, put that towards the debt. But just on a realistic basis, this is $40 for every individual tax return in this country. Typically $80 to $120 a household. For the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that's next to nothing. For those who are in the $40,000 to $45,000 tax range, that's actually going to be somewhat significant. I mean, that'll cover groceries for about a month. Okay, let me rephrase that. That'll cover groceries for about a week. Not even. Good God. How bad is that? So the last time I went to the grocery store, I didn't get any meat at all. Just got basic resupplies, and I came in just shy of 60. But still, that's not insignificant money to some of the lower echelons of taxpayers. And instead, that's going to be going to Northrop Grumman. And again, what I just said a moment ago, there are so many better things that this could be going for than to go back out to Ukraine. Well, technically go back to the defense contractors so they can replenish, so that our Pentagon can pull more off of the shelf and send it over to Ukraine. More of the surplus stuff. Surplus, so-called. And send it over to the Ukraine. We just had a conversation about the debt ceiling. And what did we raise that? 50 billion? Until next fiscal year? That's not an insignificant percentage of what our debt ceiling was just raised. But no, instead we're going to go send that over to the Ukraine. Just a brief aside from the Blaze, talking about how they got to that figure. Pentagon says it overvalued military equipment sent to Ukraine by $6.2 billion. Valuation errors will allow the U.S. to send additional aid, instead of, again, going back to its people here, or the wall. From Candace Hathaway. The Pentagon announced on Tuesday that it had overvalued military equipment sent to Ukraine by $6.2 billion, and that the valuation errors would allow the U.S. to send additional aid. Last month, the DoD estimated it overvalued the equipment by about $3 billion, while the error was discovered in March. Congress was not informed until May. House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCall and House Armed Services Committee Chairman Mike Rogers released a statement saying the accounting and the delayed notification was extremely problematic. McCall and Rogers urged the admin to use the unused funds to assist Ukraine. And again, instead of going towards the national debt, or maybe investing in getting rid of some of the roadblocks to creating new jobs. You know, there are 10,000 better things you could do with this money than just ship it back out to the Ukraine. Or again, buy new equipment so you can draw more down off your shelf and ship it over to the Ukraine. Sabrina Singh explained the DoD calculated the equipment cost based on the replacement value instead of its current value, the Associated Press reported. During our regular oversight process of presidential drawdown packages, the DoD discovered inconsistencies in equipment valuation for Ukraine, Singh stated in May. In some cases, replacement cost rather than net book value was used, therefore overestimating the value of the equipment drawn down from the U.S. stocks. So, and again, they're not sending cash over there. Well, they are, but not in this instance. All of this coming at the heels were Biden coming out to give us more fear porn. Biden warns Putin's threat to use tactical nuclear weapons is real, man, after Russian despot moved them close to the Polish border in Belarus. From Christian Oliver. Biden has warned the threat of Russian President Vladimir Putin using tactical nukes is real days after denouncing Russia's deployment of such weapons in Belarus. So, I am starting to think that either he is getting ready to go back and retaliate for the counteroffensive, or he is trying to make a show of force to tell NATO to stay the fuck off his doorstep. Both of which I think could possibly be true at this point. But the fact that what he's doing right now wasn't done a year and a half ago tells me that he was never serious about taking Ukraine. I still to this day believe that this was a liberation front for the Donetsk region. It comes after Biden on Saturday called Putin's announcement that Russia had deployed its first nuclear weapons to Belarus absolutely irresponsible. Oh man, when I was out here about 2 years ago, saying I worried about the Colorado River drying up, everyone looked at me like I was crazy, man. Well, everyone's been looking at you like you are crazy since the Obama admin. Biden told a group of donors in California on Monday. They looked at me, man, when I said, I worry about Putin using tactical nuclear weapons. It's real, man. Last week, Lukashenko said his country has started taking delivery of Russian tactical nukes, some of which he said were 3 times more powerful than the atomic bombs the U.S. dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. That's not actually saying much. As far as nuclear weapons capabilities go, those were actually pretty weak. But they were some of the first shots in the world, too, so do keep that in mind. The deployment is Russia's first move of such warheads, shorter range, less powerful nuclear weapons that could be used on the battlefield outside of Russia since the fall of the Soviet Union. The U.S. has said it has no intention of altering its stance on strategic nukes in response to the deployment and has not seen any signs that Russia is preparing to use a nuclear weapon. In May, Russia dismissed Biden's criticism of its plan to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus, saying the U.S. had for decades deployed such nuclear weapons in Europe, which is a valid counterpoint. The Russian deployment is being watched closely by the U.S. and its allies, as well as by China, which has repeatedly cautioned against the use of nuclear weapons in the war in Ukraine. It comes after a leading academic dubbed Russia's sighting of nuclear weapons in Belarus as a blackmail tactic to threaten the West. Also, not entirely off. Mark Allman, director of the Crisis Research Institute in Oxford, said President Vladimir Putin's decision to station them close to the Polish border was designed to add layers of uncertainty about Russia's strategy. The Belarusian weapon is far bigger threat to Western Europe, said Dr. Allman. I don't think he's got the balls I'm going to come right out and say it. I don't think he's got the balls. But he's trying to do the Trump strategy and say, you back off, you stop sending weapons to enemies, or I shall do it. I'll do it. And getting people like Allman to come out and say, will he do it? Do we know? Will he do it? It's a blackmail tactic dating back to when Putin was a KGB agent in East Germany during the cruise missile crisis of the 80s. There is a ploy to try to decouple the Western alliance over Ukraine by threatening neighbors like Poland that act as a supply route for a military aid. He said the Kremlin's move offered Russia other advantages, including to its key ally in the region, Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko. And again, we'll get the map. I know that the anti-Putin people hate it when I bring out the map. Because it shows that there's no real strategy other than the Donetsk region. Alright. Let's bring this up here, just to remind you. If Russia, here's Russia over here, next to Kazakhstan, which is where Borat is from. If Russia were intent on taking the Ukraine, quickly, and with little loss of life, they would have launched a small flotilla from here, with an infantry coming around this direction, and another set of infantry coming down from this direction, and a flotilla and another infantry point coming up from the south. The Russian alliance, especially with Belarus, has the territory to surround Kiev if Kiev was the target. Kiev has never once been the target in this. Yeah, they'll throw some drones at it to try to destabilize them, to stop them from doing their counteroffensive, but to take Kiev, to take the rest of the Ukraine, it might be now just because of, poking the bear. But the vast majority of the on-the-ground military action has come from a line between Kharkiv and Kherson. I think they actually did go a little bit into Odessa at some point. Which tells me, especially given the fact that this region was known for having separatists, that Mariupol, Donetsk, and the Luhansk region sent a letter out to Moscow and says, "We are tired of being part of Ukraine. Kiev treats us like garbage, treats us like entire breadbasket of all of Ukraine. We want independence. If we cannot have independence, we want to join. We want alliance with Russia." The way that they went in, the way that they did things, that is the most likely scenario based on just what they did with tactics. Even starting from Klinsky and Kursk in Russia, if they were actually trying to take the entire country of Ukraine, would have made a lot more sense than starting from Rosach and Shakhty going into the Donetsk. I've got a little bit of a lisp, and trying to pronounce Ukrainian names is a pain in my ass. To try to take the entire country, starting from here would have been easily the best strategy. And yet people keep trying to tell you, no, he's crazy, and he's always just been trying to take the whole country. Let's shift gears here. Let's talk about China. China. We're going to talk about China. Spy balloon chapter should be closed after China talks, Blinken tells NPC News. And yet I'm still going to tell people I was the one flying the balloons at the beginning of the show. from Janice Mackey Freyer and Jennifer Jett. Anthony Blinken told NBC News on Monday that his trip to Beijing marked an important start in stabilizing U.S. ties with China, and that the country should move on from the spy balloon incident that postponed his visit earlier this year. That chapter should be closed, Blinken said in an interview before leaving Beijing. Meanwhile, while people were watching him, he was furiously blinking twice, where he spent 2 days meeting with senior Chinese officials and President Xi Jinping. Stopping the downward spiral in relations between the world's two largest economies is not the product of one visit, even as intense and in some ways productive as this was, Blinken said, but it's a good and I think an important start. U.S. officials have played down expectations for the trip, saying any breakthroughs were unlikely. Even after Blinken's visit, the two countries have yet to restore several military-to-military communication channels that China cut last year, in protest of former House Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, the self-ruling democracy that Beijing claims as its own territory. Blinken said it was imperative that the communications be reestablished, citing recent encounters in the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea that China says were necessary to defend its national sovereignty, but the U.S. had labeled dangerous. That's the quickest path to inadvertent conflict, said Blinken, who added that restoring channels was not something we're going to drop. Well, good luck. I don't believe that you're going to get China to bend on anything because China owns your boss and most of our country. On the Titanic. Missing Titanic sub has less than 40 hours of breathable air left as U.S. Coast Guard search continues. From Alex Sunby. I have already started to see people start to say that we shouldn't be using government resources. People who were basically going on a private trip or a thrill seek. But we are the police of the world's waterways. Yeah, Chris Christie is said to be a big fan of General. I think that's supposed to be General So's. Which Chris Christie is a big fan of General So's, by the way. Thank you, Mogwai, for that. A sub that went missing while carrying 5 people to the wreckage of the Titanic has less than 40 hours of breathable air as of Tuesday evening, so this is still from last night. Let's see, we were at 41 when we started yesterday, so that means that they're getting down to the last few hours right now. It's getting down to crunch time, and I do hope that they made it. I really do. The U.S. Coast Guard says search efforts continue. The sub had about 96 hours of oxygen on board, officials said. A Canadian research vessel lost contact with the submersible during a dive on Sunday morning, about 900 miles east of Cape Cod, and U.S. and Canadian authorities have been searching for it. Coast Guard Captain Jamie Frederick told reporters during a news conference on Tuesday that about 40 hours of breathable air left was an estimate based off the vessel's original 96 hours of available oxygen. Chief Petty Officer Robert Simpson, a Coast Guard spokesman, said there wouldn't be a hard and fast transition from a search and rescue to a recovery operation when those hours are up, saying there were factors that could extend the search. There's nothing wrong with General So's, it's just that Chris Christie likes to eat. I haven't had a lot of General So's. I like it, but I like it better on shrimp than chicken. Well, I like most things better in Chinese food on shrimp than chicken. I don't really care for Chinese chicken. I don't really care for Chickadee China either, by the way. We will do everything in our power to effect a rescue, Frederick said. There is a full court press effort to get equipment on scene as quickly as we can. Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood, his son Solomon, British explorer Hamish Harding, and French explorer Paul Henry Nargiole were on the sub, along with Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate Expeditions, the US-based company that planned the voyage. And it's just a happy coincidence that this company is called OceanGate, which is going to be the name of the scandal that goes with this if they do happen to pass away in the midst of this. It's going to be OceanGate. A friend of mine named Ryan, from back when I lived on the East Coast, made a post on the Boomer book years and years ago. This was back when the Boomer book was still cool. And said, hey, this was, and he was a big New England fan, obviously, because he lived in Massachusetts for the first 18 years of his life. But he said, during Deflategate, he says, can we find a way to stop naming every scandal after Gate? And I said, well, Ryan, that is a scandal in and of itself. It's called Gate. If the sub is found in time, Frederick said it would be difficult to describe what deep sea rescue would exactly entail because we've never had to go through this before. That's a question the experts need to look at, and what's best course of action for recovering the sub, but I think it's going to depend on that particular situation, he said. The Coast Guard said the last recorded communication from the sub was about an hour and 45 minutes into Sunday's dive. Since the sub went missing, the Coast Guard, Canadian Coast Guard, U.S. Naval and Air National Guard have searched a combined area of 7,600 square miles, an area larger than the state of Connecticut, Frederick said. So we have that going. But we've got an update. We've got a couple stories on this. Eyewitness 7 ABC from LA says banging and noises heard from search area for lost Titanic tour submersible, Coast Guard says. From Patrick Whittle, Holly Raymer, and the Associated Press. We talked about General So's chicken. Mogwai says meow, and Silentcaster says that's offensive to your roommates. Which Mogwai reminds us of the name of his cat. Silentcaster, unnamed sources, approves. Rescuers on Wednesday rushed more ships and vessels to the area where a submersible disappeared on its way to the Titanic wreckage. Hoping underwater sounds they detected for a second straight day might help narrow their search in an increasingly urgent mission. Do they have, and I don't know if this is actually the case because of how deep it is, but do we have a submarine down there? Because, now, I've read a lot of Clancy novels. I have. I'm about halfway through the Jack Ryan series. And I have read enough Clancy to know that one of the big things that submarines do when they navigate and look for enemies is look for sounds. Whether it just be from a propeller sound or from people who might be walking on the decks. They can hear that for miles and miles away. And typically can pinpoint, give or take, within a few hundred feet of where that sound is coming from. So if they had that kind of expertise in the 80s and early 90s, I do have to wonder if we do have one of our regular military, our naval subs out there in this area, listening for the banging. Marjorie Taylor Greene has drawn articles of impeachment against the sub and the Titanic. Nice, Mogwai. The full scope of the search was twice the size of Connecticut, in waters 2.5 miles deep, said Captain Jamie Frederick of the 1st Coast Guard District, who noted that authorities are still holding out hope that the 5 passengers could be saved aboard the Titan. So that's Newfoundland. That's where the wreck is. And it looks like, yeah, they're probably like panning out all over this area here. This is a rescue mission, 100%, he said. We'll continue to put every available asset that we have in an effort to find the Titan and the crew members. But even those who expressed optimism warned that many obstacles remain, from pinpointing the vessel's location to reaching it with rescue equipment to bringing it to the surface assuming it's still intact, and all that has to happen before the passenger's oxygen supply runs out, which some have estimated might happen as early as Thursday morning. Yeah, we are getting down there. And like Silentcaster actually just said, it might be too late already. There is a good opportunity that it's already too late. Because a crack in the glass or a crack in the hull somewhere under that kind of pressure could cause the implosion, and I mean, it could be all gone. The fact that we're hearing the banging gives me hope. I do want to see these people come back. I'm the eternal optimist. My biggest fear, by the way, is that they're going to get this right down at the wire, at the very, 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 very last second. And one of the problems that's been pointed out to this is if they do find these people, find them alive, coming at the very, very end of their usable oxygen, raising that submersible too fast will liquefy the people inside of it. That's my biggest concern for this. But we are hearing noise, so... And I was picked up by airplanes and ocean-going equipment. Insider reporting missing Titanic sub rescuers heard noises like banging but haven't found the sound source yet. A Canadian surveillance plane has detected underwater noises in the area where rescues are searching for a missing tourist submersible. The Coast Guard confirmed on Tuesday, but the searchers have yet to find the source. Canadian P-3 aircraft detected underwater noises in the search area, the 1st Coast Guard District tweeted. As a result, ROV operations were relocated in an attempt to explore the origin of the noises. Those ROV searches have yielded negative results but continue. At a Wednesday press conference, Captain Jamie Frederick, response coordinator of USGC's 1st District, said more P-3 aircrafts detected noises Wednesday, and the search and rescue mission continues to explore the area where the noises were detected. So, my fingers are crossed, and I'm saying a prayer for these people. I hope they're protected. But on the other side of this, and some of the things that are being brought up in the chat as well, red flags surrounded the missing Titanic sub years before disappearance, from Zach Jewell. As an international search continues for the missing Titanic submersible, carrying 5 people, questions swirl around the aircraft's construction and the safety procedures its company put in place. The submersible, named the Titan, went missing on June 18th after plunging into depths of the Atlantic on a voyage to see the wreckage of the Titanic. The Titan belongs to OceanGate, a U.S. company that provides crewed submersibles for research, exploration, and tourism. Wealthy adventurers can pay $250,000 a ticket for the opportunity to dive more than 2 miles under the ocean's surface. Yeah, no thanks. I can find better ways to spend $250,000. The voyage aboard was never without risk, however. Those wishing to squeeze in the submersible, roughly the size of a minivan, had to sign waivers upon waivers, accepting the possibility of injury or death. And before the Titan's latest trek, OceanGate faced multiple warnings from people inside and outside the company, as well as a lawsuit from an employee flagging what he saw as a massive safety issue. OceanGate boasts the Titan features off-the-shelf technology which helped streamline the construction and makes it simple to operate and replace parts in the field. In a CBS News report last year, OceanGate founder and CEO Stockton Rush, who was on the missing submersible. Oh, that's right, he's the CEO, isn't he? That just raised a whole lot of other questions to this. Showed off an off-brand video game controller that he said runs the whole thing in largely empty interior, except for an assortment of screens and sort of a toilet setup. That's something I never thought of. They're crapping down there in this thing. By the way, that's not an off-brand video game controller either. That's a Logitech. That's the... As far as PC controllers go, that's the name of the game. Frida Gittis says this short clip will help you understand why the Titanic mini-sub is missing and why this was an accident waiting to happen. Let's watch.
Service. an experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. Where do I sign?
Oh, take your shoes off. That's customary. Okay. Wow.
Inside, the sub has about as much room as a minivan.
So this is not your grandfather's submersible. We only have one button. That's it. It should be like an elevator. You know, it shouldn't take a lot of skill.
The Titan is the only 5-person sub in the world that can reach Titanic depths, 2.4 miles below the sea. It's also the only one with a toilet. Sort of. And yet, I couldn't help noticing how many pieces of this sub seemed improvised.
We can use these off-the-shelf components.
I got these from Camper World. We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on! It seems like...
Yeah. CBS correspondent David Pogue reported the Titan's hatch is sealed by an external crew with 17 bolts. And that's the only way out. The report also noted the submersible lacks underwater GPS, but instead is guided by text messages from the surface ship. Pogue, who joined Rush on a 2-day journey in the Titan, said he had to sign paperwork that stated, "This experimental vessel has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, emotional trauma, or death." So, maybe not the best thing to go down in, especially if you're offering it up for $250,000 a pop. I would hope that you had better equipment than that for $250,000 a pop. Although some of that would be also the boat ride to get out to where they're launching from. I don't know. My fingers are still crossed. I think that they're going to pull through. With as much of media attention as has been on this, I think they're going to pull through. Huh. Silentcaster says, maybe if they use the Capcom code, they'll get infinite lives and be okay. Oh, Mr. Scott is here. What is this new emoji thing? I don't know about new emojis on the YouTube side. I know that we've got them on Twitch side, and apparently we can do them on Rumble too. I haven't set any up, but I will probably set all of my emojis from Twitch onto Rumble because we can do custom ones. If we can do them on YouTube too, I think I'll do it there. And I hope that there is some sort of incentive structure that we can, that I can add them and say, hey, if you throw me, well, no, I guess I'm demonetized on YouTube, so I guess that wouldn't work after all. But remember, greed is eternal. All right, we've talked about finance, we've talked about the Ukraine. Now it's time to talk about the great American reality show known as The Federal Apprentice. First thing we're going to do is talk about John Durham from Fox News. John Durham shuts down Adam Schiff in Trump-Russia hearing. Not illegal. From Anders Hagstrom. Former special counsel John Durham shut down a line of questioning from Adam Schiff that sought to assert Trump Jr. had committed a crime during a meeting in Trump Tower. The exchange came during Durham's testimony before the House Judiciary on Wednesday. Schiff referenced the Trump Tower meeting between Trump Jr. and Russian individuals prior to the 2016 election that the lawmaker claimed constituted a crime. Why? Prior to the election, the Trump family had interests in Russia, financial interests. I think they still do, actually. I think there's a Trump Tower in Moscow. There's one in Beijing. I know there's one in Beijing. Why is that a crime? Are you aware, Mr. Durham, that Robert Mueller's and congressional investigations also revealed that Don Jr. was informed that a Russian official was offering the Trump campaign a high-level and sensitive information that would be incriminating of Hillary Clinton? Schiff asked. Sure, people get phone calls all the time from individuals who claim to have information like that, Durham responded. And once the Clinton campaign verifies that they're true, those people get very, very depressed and off themselves. Oh, I know what you're talking about now, Mr. Scott, because I've been doing live streams for music at work. And yeah, I see that in their chats too. Yeah, they've got the heart there. That's supposed to be your ability to just quick like something. A comment or something that you see on the live stream. I think is what that's supposed to be. I don't know, you're right, it's really annoying. It really is. Really, the son of a presidential candidate gets calls all the time for foreign governments offering dirt on their opponent. Is that what you're saying? Schiff replied. I don't think this is unique in your experience, Durham responded. So you have other instances of Russian government offering dirt on a presidential candidate to the presidential candidate's son. Is that what you're saying? Schiff continued. Durham then asked Schiff to repeat the question and subsequently responded. I'm saying that people can make phone calls, making claims all the time. Of that, you may have experience. Look, are you trying to diminish the significance of what happened here? And the secret meeting that the president's son set up in Trump Tower receiving that incriminating information. I'm not trying to diminish it at all, but I think the more complete story is that they met, it was a ruse, and they didn't talk about Mrs. Clinton, Durham stated. I don't think that was a well-advised thing to do. Oh, not well-advised? That's the understatement of the year. So you think it's perfectly appropriate, or maybe just ill-advised for a presidential campaign, to secretly meet with a Russian delegation to get dirt on their opponent? Schiff asked. I mean, the Clintons did it all the time. If you're asking, would I do it? I hope I wouldn't do it. But it's not illegal. It was stupid, foolish, and ill-advised, Durham replied. Well, it's illegal to conspire to get incriminating opposition research from a hostile government that has a financial value to a campaign. Wouldn't that violate campaign laws? Schiff asked. I don't know all those facts to be true, Durham concluded. So, it's a little bit weaker than the shutdown that Fox News promised us, but Durham is right, it's not illegal. It's tremendously stupid, but I mean, there was a lot of that going through the Trump administration. It's tremendously stupid to do some of the things that they do. But it's well within the confines of the law, somehow. And also in the midst of that, from ABC News, House Republicans censure top Democrat Adam Schiff in a rare move. From Lauren Peller, Lali Ibsa, and Catherine Falders. The House passed a censure resolution against Adam Schiff, a move inflaming rhetoric on both sides of the aisle. Wait, I heard inflaming rhetoric on both sides of the aisle, and somewhere, off in the distance, I suppose it'd be that direction, wouldn't it? Because that's southwest. No, we'd have to be southeast. Yeah, off in the distance over here. Southeast. Towards West Virginia. I hear a small Asian man in a beanie say, Civil War! The rebuke of Schiff for what the resolution says was his misleading the American public and for conduct of becoming a elected member of the House. An exceedingly rare step for the House to take.
The Democratic National Committee has just released a statement on the indictment, and it reads, no matter what happens in Trump's
Stupid autoplay. Drew impassioned speeches from both Democrats and Republicans. Rep. Anna Luna, who introduced the resolution, painted the measure as a clear vote between right and wrong. This is not a partisan act. This is not a conservative versus liberal vote, even though that's how the battle lines came. This is a clear vote between right and wrong. I urge you to do the right thing, she said. Luna said running away from this opportunity to hold this man accountable would betray the people who trusted us and sent us here to Congress to do the right thing. Lauren Boebert, who earlier this week brought forward a resolution that would impeach President Biden, we'll be talking about that at the very end of this, said Schiff was a crook who represents the worst of permanent Washington using his position of trust to lie to the American people. Well, look, if Adam Schiff here had a shred of human decency left, he would resign from Congress in disgrace. His tombstone should be one word, liar, she said. That just reminds me of the old pizza commercials back in the day. What do you want on your tombstone? Can you even still get tombstone pizza? I don't know if I've seen that for years. Oh, it's still out there. It's a Nestle brand. So it's still legally out there. I don't know if they just don't sell it here, or because we do have a lot of local options around here for frozen pizza. Jack's, Orbs, Latza Matza. That's a bit more of an expensive one. Brew Pub. Those are all four of those are made right here in Wisconsin. So I guess it would be probably hard for Tombstone to keep up as a national brand. But Schiff shot back with what he called this false and defamatory resolution, amounted to petty political payback in an effort to censure or fine Trump's opposition into submission. Well, I mean, you could just not lie to the people. We don't want you to turn into a Republican or be submissive. I want you to push back and fight back, because I want you to keep the other party in check. But I want you to do it honestly, not lying. But I will not yield, not 1 inch, Schiff pledged. The California Democrat turned the tables on Republicans, arguing they were the ones who deserved to be censured. My colleagues, if there's a cause for the censure in this House, and there is, it should be directed at those in this body who sought to overturn a free and fair election, he said, as none of them did. The question, my Republican colleagues, is not why am I the subject of this false resolution for doing my constitutional duty, but why are you not? Why are you not standing beside me, the subject of a similar rebuke for speaking the truth? Why did you not stand up to Trump? Will it be said of you that you lack the courage to stand up to the most immoral, unlawful, and unethical president in history? But consoled yourselves by attacking those who did, he continued. Hakeem Jeffries denounced what he called a fake, phony, and fraudulent censure resolution, arguing the rebuke was born out of Republicans' lack of policy vision. Now, if it was fake, phony, and fraudulent, they'd be going after Mr. Bang Bang with Fang Fang. Jeffries, who insisted Schiff has done nothing wrong, suggested that former President Trump, whom he called the extreme puppet master, directed the censure vote. Can you back that up with evidence? I'm willing, by the way, if there's evidence that that's true, I'm willing to hear him out. When he says bend the knee, the extreme MAGA Republicans say how high, he said. What? You moron, it would be how low if you're bending the knee. You dumb shit. Former Speaker Pelosi echoed Jeffries' rhetoric, calling the proceedings a puppet show. The other side has turned this chamber into a puppet show. And you know what? The puppeteer, Donald Trump, is shining a light onto those strings. You look miserable. You look miserable, she said, addressing Republicans. And then she turned off and realized that she could make a law improving her stock portfolio and bought a large number of stock. Mr. Scott says a puppet points out the strings of another puppet. And then right after that, we hear from that puppet's puppet master, adjusting her dentures. So Schiff has been rebuked. there's literally nothing that's stopping him from coming back and doing this again. Like, there are people that are out there saying, oh, he might not get reelected. He might be barred from running, even from Senate. No, that's not going to happen. Now I have people arguing in my comments about whether or not Durham spanked Schiff. Well, I'm probably going to have to mute that thread because that's getting annoying. I just kind of glanced through that. They're not even commenting back to me. They're just commenting back on something that somebody commented on what I said. But that's what the mute button is for. Partisan bickering that's never going to go anywhere. One of the key things that made this censure vote go through, by the way, coming from CBS News, House advances resolution to censure Schiff after dropping $16 million fine. So, and that's one of the only reasons that it made it through right now, is because they lost key votes based on the fine from Caitlin Yelek. A revived GOP-led effort to censure Adam Schiff for his role in congressional investigations moved ahead on Wednesday, 1 week after a similar measure failed. Last week, 20 Republicans joined Democrats in voting to table the earlier resolution, blocking that effort to publicly reprimand him, Anna Paulina Luna, an ardent Trump supporter, then tweaked the measure to remove a potential $16 million fine for Schiff that several Republicans considered unconstitutional. Democrats tried to table the new resolution on Wednesday, but the vote failed 208 to 218, with all Republicans voting to advance the measure. The motion to table needed a simple majority to pass. Luna introduced the resolution as privileged fast-tracking its consideration under House rules. The chamber immediately began debating the matter after the vote on the motion to table, teeing up a vote on final passage as early as Wednesday evening. As House Chair of the Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff launched an all-out political campaign built on baseless distortions against a sitting U.S. president at the expense of every single citizen in this country. In the honor of the House, Luna said on Wednesday, calling the resolution a clear vote between right and wrong. 24 House lawmakers have been censured in U.S. history, most recently in 2021, when Paul Gosar was censored for tweeting a video depicting violence against President Biden and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And by the way, we've watched that video numerous times. We unfortunately cannot on YouTube. Found that out the hard way. But we have watched that video numerous times. It was an anime theme song. It was a stand-in. It was not the big deal that they made out of it. And honestly, with the Paul Gosar censure, they did cheapen the act of censure so much that what we just saw with Adam Schiff is not out of the norms in any stretch of the imagination. I think, honestly, that if they hadn't done the censure for that video, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. We'd still think Adam Schiff is a shifty little liar, but we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Thomas Massie, of course, defending his ability to come back and, oh, suddenly I can go vote for this. Thomas Massie tweeting out, the resolution to censure Adam Schiff has just passed the House, with the changes I insisted were needed to make it constitutional. Thank you to everybody who stood with me and the Constitution to fix this resolution. That means absolutely nothing, by the way. And one of the things I commented back on this was, yes, that slap on the wrist, that'll sure show him. He'll think twice about launching partisan attacks based on lies next time and costing the taxpayer millions more. I mean, we can just raise the debt ceiling to cover it when he does it anyway. I should have finished that out with when he does it anyway. Bowtied Agris, who was probably a fan of Massie up until the debt ceiling, said, why not push for his removal, though? There's enough evidence to warrant his removal from the House. That is a constitutionally outlined procedure. I don't think that he has done enough to warrant a removal, but I would say, and again, this is something that the stage has been set for already, in American politics that he maybe should lose all of his committee positions. He still is on a bunch of committees. He lost the Intelligence Committee position, and that's it. But he's still on, I think, a dozen other committees. And he should lose all of them. One of his opponents, coming from the Hill, New York Democrat on Schiff, censure resolution. You're the party of George Santos, who again, I'm starting to believe was put in as a plant so that Democrats had somebody else to bitch about, because Marjorie Taylor Greene was starting to fall in line with the Uniparty. From Julius Shapiro. Dan Goldman criticized House Republicans on Wednesday over their resolution to censure Adam Schiff, pointing to their lack of action against embattled Republican George Santos. One of my colleagues says, "We will hold members accountable. You're the party of George Santos. Who are you holding accountable?" Goldman said during a debate on the censure measure on the House floor. The guy is an alleged and acknowledged liar and indicted, and you protect him every day, he continued. Don't lecture us with your projection and your defense of Trump. It's pathetic and it's beneath you, and it's beneath this body. I still don't think Santos should be voted back in next term. I think he should be primaried. I really do. But whether or not he stays in through the rest of his term, that's between him and the people of his district. That's all the information that they have here. Everything else goes on into a review of what we've already read. Let's talk about the articles of impeachment, Mogwai's favorite topic. Lauren Boebert to force House vote on impeaching Biden. From Zoe Richards. This one got spicy too, by the way. Rep. Lauren Boebert introduced articles of impeachment Tuesday against President Biden that will force a House floor vote in the coming days. The articles offered by Boebert, which focus on Biden's handling of immigration and the U.S.-Mexico border, come on the day court filings revealed a plea agreement for Hunter Biden over misdemeanor tax offenses and a felony firearm crime. President Biden's negligence of duty has resulted in the surrender of operational control of the border to the complete and total control of foreign criminal cartels, putting lives of American citizens in jeopardy, Boebert said on the House floor on Tuesday. Boebert is a little bit faster at speaking than Marjorie Taylor Greene. Unlike the other impeachment efforts, Boebert said hers uses a procedural tactic that requires the House to hold a floor vote. Okay, interesting. I'm listening. I'm bringing my articles of impeachment against Joe Biden to the House floor in a privileged motion, meaning that every member of Congress must vote on holding Joe Biden accountable, Boebert tweeted. A spokesperson for Kevin McCarthy did not immediately respond to a request for comment about when the resolution would come to the floor. Catherine Clark, the Democratic whip, said in an email to colleagues Tuesday that the House is expected to take a procedure vote on the motion to table the resolution when it's offered this week. Passing a motion to table the resolution would essentially block Boebert's efforts. The 6-page impeachment resolution argues Biden has abused his power and is derelict in his duty as president, leading an admin that's continuously overtly and consistently violated federal immigration law by pursuing an aggressive open borders agenda. Boebert, who tried to impeach Biden in 2021, accuses him of purposefully and knowingly releasing millions of migrants into the U.S. without the intention or ability to ensure that they appear in immigration court to face asylum or deportation proceedings. Asked for comment, the White House spokesperson Ian Sams said in a statement that extreme House Republicans are staging baseless political stunts that do nothing to help the real people and only to serve to get themselves attention. You know, like impeachment 1.0 and impeachment 2.0 in the Trump admin. Congressional Republicans said some Democrats have criticized Biden over his handling of the southern border and have frequently opposed efforts to wind down a Trump-era policy known as Title 42, which was lifted last month. The Biden admin has defended its border policies, arguing that in recent court filing that its actions have reduced a number of migrants permitted to apply for asylum at the southern border by allowing them to be screened for asylum only if they can prove that they previously tried to apply in countries they passed through, or that their cases are exceptions to the rule. According to CBP, the border crossings have fallen from over 10,000 a day to roughly 3,500 a day since Title 42 was ended. Republicans have previously introduced impeachment articles against Alejandro Mayorkas, which have not gone to the floor for a vote. In May, Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced impeachment articles against Biden over the admin's handling of migrant crossings, but the resolution did not require a floor vote as Boebert's will. And again, I don't necessarily know why Marjorie Taylor Greene is so mad at Boebert for this, but we're going to find out. Because there was a cat fight on the floor. And those two were like best friends during the first term of Biden. But again, I do think that that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been a plant since the beginning. I really do. But I mean, what else have we had here? I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that was her first action in Congress, was to introduce articles of impeachment in a House that was not favorable to her on something that was going to come down to the vote. And she tried to do so on crimes that were committed prior to Biden taking office. That's one thing about impeachment. Well, number one, you can impeach a ham sandwich, so it doesn't necessarily have to be for crimes that were committed in office anymore, but under the original understanding of articles of impeachment, they did have to, they required an action that was done during the presidency for Bill, for Tricky Dick, etc. During the term in office should be more accurate because articles of impeachment can be brought against any member of the executive branch, especially in the cabinet position, and any member of Congress, and actually the judiciary as well. The Supreme Court can be impeached on top of it. I know they were talking about doing that. I'm actually a little surprised that Democrats didn't, because they assured their voters that they would. Impeach Barrett, impeach Kavanaugh, impeach Gorsuch. House GOP fumes as the right goes rogue on impeachment. From Andrew Solender and Julie Grace Brufke over at Axios. House Republicans erupted into infighting on Wednesday as leadership and members across the conference pushed back on a burst of impeachment votes being forced by right-wing lawmakers. It's an escalation of an increasingly acrimonious internal GOP dynamic as members of the right-wing Freedom Caucus try to seize control of the party's agenda. I think they've kind of gone rogue, said Kevin Calvert, an ally of House Speaker McCarthy. McCarthy, in a closed-door conference meeting on Wednesday, argued against Lauren Boebert's resolution to impeach Biden, according to multiple sources in the meeting. The speaker said investigations into the Biden admin need to play out, and such resolutions have to run through the normal committee process before any such vote takes place. Even some members aligned with the Freedom Caucus were receptive to the case. I like the committee system, Tim Burchett of Tennessee said, saying that efforts like Boebert's to circumvent it frustrates me. Boebert was not at the conference meeting, despite McCarthy inviting her to speak, according to multiple sources. Boebert's measure, which targets Biden's handling of the U.S.-Mexico border, isn't the only one being forced to a vote this week. Anna Paulina Luna's resolution censuring Schiff is set to be voted on again on Wednesday. We got the resolution of that already. That's done and gone. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has introduced impeachment resolutions against 5 Biden officials, told Axios, "Impeachment has to be done. I do not have an exact timeline, but I am converting them to privilege resolutions." Several Republicans told Axios they don't plan to vote for Boebert's resolution, placing it in serious jeopardy. Yeah, it's not going to pass. The Uniparty will protect their own. I don't intend to, said French Hill of Arkansas, another McCarthy ally. Carlos Jimenez of Florida said he is probably not voting for what he calls a premature impeachment, adding, "I may vote to impeach the president, but we need to go through the process." This motion is not going to pass. It's probably going to have a bit of opposition from both parties, said John Duarte of California. Impeachment is one of the awesome powers of Congress. It's not something you should flippantly exercise in 2 days. Garrett Graves of Louisiana, a McCarthy lieutenant, said, arguing, it actually undermines future efforts. Let's see, what impeachment was flippantly voted on and exercised in 2 days? Oh yeah, that was impeachment 2.0 of Trump. That was start to finish in 2 days. Some swing district members said in the conference after meeting that Boebert's vote puts them in a tough political position. Biden District Rep Don Bacon told Axios it's not right. It's people thinking of themselves. They're using these motions for raising campaign cash, one House Republican speaking on the condition of anonymity vented. Anonymous sources. Mogwai! Go to DC and get your cat. Duarte, another Biden district member, told Axios he is frustrated with Boebert for bringing it up. Callie Armstrong of North Dakota predicts its impacts will be felt more so, probably in primaries with moderates who vote against the resolution risking a challenge from the right. Well, again, if that's what the people want, then they should be exposed to who their representatives are. I don't think this goes anywhere. And then we've got one more from the New Republic, which I do not normally use because it is not green check verified, but I do want to talk about what's happening with this and where this goes. So the New Republic, non-green check verified, tells us MTG is so pissed at Lauren Boebert, she called her a bitch on the House floor. Part of the reason that I don't use that, because I do try to keep myself, most of the time, AM radio friendly. I have got no author given on this one. Oh no, yes I do. It's just above the headline. From Tori Otten. Republicans are not happy with Lauren Boebert, who moved to force a vote this week to impeach the president. But her former work bestie Marjorie Taylor Greene is absolutely livid. Boebert introduced articles of impeachment Tuesday under a privilege resolution, meaning there has to be a vote on the measure within 2 days. The move surprised and frustrated many of her colleagues. McCarthy said the measure was premature and urged Republicans to oppose it. He also warned it could hurt their bogus investigation into Biden because this is left-wing trash. Don Bacon called Boebert's resolution frivolous and said she made the impeachment into playground games. Pot kettle, Don Bacon. Greene, on the other hand, was upset for a very, very different playground explanation. She tore into Boebert on the House floor Wednesday afternoon for copying her articles of impeachment. Greene introduced articles of impeachment against Biden in May over his handling of immigration at the southern border. Those articles have yet to go anywhere. I've donated to you, I've defended you, but you've been nothing but a little bitch to me, Greene told Boebert in the middle of the House floor, according to the Daily Beast. Citing an anonymous source who witnessed the exchange. Mogwai! Come get your cat! DC is no place for a kitten. And you copied my articles of impeachment after I asked you to co-sponsor them. Boebert, who claimed she never read the articles, replied, "Okay, Marjorie, we're through. We were never ever together." Well, we were never ever together, Greene shot back. Earlier Wednesday, Greene had publicly shaded Boebert for copying her work and then skipping steps to get all the attention. I had already introduced articles of impeachment on Joe Biden for the border. I asked her to co-sponsor mine. She didn't, Greene said. She basically copied my articles, then introduced them, and then changed them to a privilege resolution. The Georgia Republican told The Hill Wednesday that she would convert her articles and others she has drawn up against members of the Biden admin to privilege resolutions so she can introduce whenever she feels like. When asked if she would support Boebert's resolution, Green replied, "Of course I support, because they're identical to mine. They're basically a copycat." Well, catfight. Alright, let's get through some of the other stuff that we've got here. We're gonna, I think, get through to stuff from yesterday. What we know for sure, and what we've known since the debt ceiling resolution passed from CNBC. It's official, student loan payments will restart in October, Education Department says. From Annie Nova. Over the 3-year-long pause on student loan payments, the U.S. Department of Education has repeatedly told borrowers their bills were set to resume, only to take it back and provide them some more time. This time, however, the agency really means it. No, we'll go into a recessionary tailspin in the middle of September. And then, oh, nope, we gotta do it again. Bet me. The Education Department posted on its website that payments will be due starting in October, and a recent law passed by Congress will make changing that plan difficult. It will likely be a big adjustment for borrowers when the pandemic-era policy expires. Around 40 million Americans have debt from their education. The typical monthly bill is roughly $350. For many borrowers, that payment pause has been a life-altering, saving many from financial ruin and allowing others to finally get ahead financially, said Persis Yu, Deputy Executive Director at the Student Borrower Protection Center. So, it's supposedly coming. Now, I see a future where this gets pushed off again. I see them finding some extraordinary measure to come back out and do this again. And CNBC actually pointed out the fact that there's got to be an extraordinary measure to do so. I have long since pointed out the fact that it would be almost political suicide for the Biden admin to allow this to start back up under his administration. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the mainstream media is threatening, and yes, this is a threat. It's threatening student loan borrowers at this point, saying, "You better be careful. That's coming back up. You're gonna start paying again. It's coming. It's coming. Oh, it's coming. You better get ready. Oh my God, it's coming." At the very last second, the Biden admin pulls a rabbit out of the hat and says, "Hey man, we're going into a recession, man. We got to do something about it, and it ain't right, man, because you're all losing your jobs and our unemployment's it's jumping up, man. So we found the resolution. I worked with my friend Kevin, and now we're gonna pause this up and oops, I just lost the cap that I was fidgeting with, and now I'm gonna come back up and I'm gonna pause them again, man." The most important part of the student loan pause was to make sure that the restart didn't happen until a non-Democrat was president. Hopefully Trump, so they can go back and blame him for the financial ruin that this brings along to the borrowers. But trust me when I explain this to you. I can see, and I'm not going to actually predict this, because I can also see a future where this goes wrong, because it does seem like they're trying to throw Biden under the bus right now. But I can see a future where at the very clutch, on the last day of September, we get the announcement that that's going to turn around and be stopped again. We'll see. From the Daily Wire, RFK Jr. says China and U.S. developing ethnic bioweapons. Pentagon says no. Well, I think your big question there is who are you going to believe? And that's not a tidy question anymore either, by the way. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. told Newsmax host Greta Van Susteren that both China and the U.S. were developing ethnic bioweapons that could target people based on racial types. The Pentagon has since denied the claim. That's terrifying if it's true, by the way. I don't think we have developed the level of technology to get that on a genetic level. But if we have, the entire world just got a hell of a lot more interesting. Kennedy, who has garnered a bitter reputation as a conspiracy theorist, has previously lobbied against the state's laws requiring vaccinations and vocally opposed the push to force Americans to get vaccinated against the pinko pox, saying that he was not against the vaccines themselves, but the fact that people were being forced into taking them. During Kennedy's recent appearance on the record with Greta Van Susteren, he took things in a different direction when he argued that China and the US were already developing bioweapons that could target specific ethnicities. Let's listen.
But what I worry about is a WMD like a virus, like a gain of function. Something. Do you worry about that? Because I see that as sort of the next big fight. Because those viruses don't see any borders, and they're relatively cheap to do this gain of function. I mean, it's just so. That's what I worry about more than the big hardware.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and we know that the Chinese are developing ethnic bioweapons that are designed to attack people of certain racial types. And we're doing the same thing. We've been collecting Chinese DNA. We've been collecting Russian DNA specifically for that. This arms race is a catastrophe. In 1969.
I want to remind you that is much. Especially if he's going to stay on the get the vaccine if you want it, but you shouldn't be forced to train of things. As much as I like the idea of what RFK Jr. is doing here, that man is never going to be president. Listen to that voice. That man cannot give a speech that will inspire hope in the American people and fear into our enemies.
We had developed by then nuclear equivalency with bioweapons, so we could eliminate the same numbers of people with bioweapons at, I think, 29 cents a death. They calculated, the Defense Department and the CIA calculated at that time. And President Nixon did the most extraordinary thing. He went to Fort Detrick and he said, we are unilaterally ending the bioweapons arms race. We are giving up all of our bioweapons. We're going to destroy them. We're going to disable the capacity at Fort Detrick, and we're not going to make them anymore. And 3 years later, almost all the nations on the earth signed a charter stopping bioweapons production. And the problem was the CIA continued to do secret bioweapons production in our country. The Russians found out about that and rejigged their program. And then after 2001, we passed the Patriot Act, which reopened the arms race, which basically canceled out Nixon's 1979 agreement treaty and launched a new bioweapons arms race, and everybody else in the world is doing it. And the impacts, as you point out, Greta, are horrific. We need to stop it. We need to go to all those nations, and we need to say to them, let's get rid of all the bioweapons.
Yeah. I don't think that's true, RFK. I don't. Not targeted on ethnicity. I'm sure that China has bioweapons out the ass. But not targeted on a genetic level at ethnicity. If we could target an attack on a genetic level, we would have such an understanding of the human genome that I would think that we'd have cured cancer by now. That's how little faith that I have in our understanding of the human genome. And yeah, that's also somebody who just does not inspire confidence in me. From the Blaze, Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg gets lambasted for deleting prediction of climate genocide after the date arrives. From Carlos Garcia. Social media users mocked and ridiculed climate change activist Greta Thunberg after the date of the climate genocide prediction came and went. Wait, you mean we're not all dead from climate change right now? Oh, fuck me. That means I gotta go to work tomorrow. In 2018, Thunberg tweeted a quote from a scientist warning that humanity would become extinct unless drastic action against global warming was undertaken within 5 years. A top climate scientist is warning that climate change will wipe out humanity unless we stop using all fossil fuels over the next 5 years. She quoted from the article. After she began being criticized over the tweet 5 years later, she deleted it in 2023. Critics piled on even more after the 20-year-old deleted her doomsday missive and reposted a screenshot of the prediction. I have a busy day planned. Can someone please ask Greta Thunberg what time climate change is going to wipe out humanity today? Replied one user. Seriously though, how did the world get so dumb? We were never always this stupid, right? Read another tweet. How dare you! According to Thunberg, the world will officially end today. Good luck, everyone, responded Ryan Fournier. But we've still got 4 more hours. Greta Thunberg has confirmed that all of humanity has been wiped out today, and she warns that it will happen again in another 5 years unless she is allowed to continue crying on national television, joked another user. How dare you! You stole my dreams and my childhood, all for a little bit of profit. How dare you! The Supreme Court considers recoil from landmark gun rights ruling. From Lawrence Hurley. One court ruled that federal law cannot bar someone from owning a gun just because the person is the subject to a domestic violence restraining order. Another decided that preventing someone convicted of a nonviolent felony from owning a gun is unconstitutional. And a third found that the federal law prohibiting people under 21 from owning a firearm is unlawful. All of these recent rulings by lower federal courts are the product of court decisions striking blows against long-standing federal gun restrictions that were issued by lower court judges in the past year after the Supreme Court, in a sweeping ruling, expanded gun rights by finding for the first time that the Constitution's Second Amendment right to bear arms extends outside the home. Well, it always has, but activists have changed that. The decision by the Supreme Court's 6-3 conservative majority has led to a flurry of challenges to long-standing laws, both federal and state, and prompted some judges to find that they're unlawful under the new standard. Other judges have upheld gun restrictions, creating divisions on the law across the country. It has also led to blue states passing a new wave of gun laws in the hopes that they will not fall foul of the Supreme Court's rationale. Now the issue is back on the Supreme Court's doorstep again, with the Biden admin asking the court to reverse the lower court ruling that invalidated the federal law barring people subject to domestic violence restraining orders from possessing firearms. The justices are scheduled to discuss it in private on Thursday, whether to hear the case in what will be the first real test of how broadly the court's conservative majority wants its 2022 ruling to be interpreted. The new test the Supreme Court adopted in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin requires judges to focus solely on whether a law comports with a historical understanding of the Second Amendment. The conservative majority in deciding Bruin appeared concerned that lower courts had not cast a more skeptical eye on gun restrictions after the Supreme Court's previous major gun rights ruling in 2008. The immediate impact of Bruin seems to suggest that lower courts, which have tilted to the right in recent years because of the appointments made by former President Trump, have received the message this time. While gun rights activists have taken aim at state and local restrictions in the aftermath of the Supreme Court ruling, a key battleground is on a series of federal restrictions that are listed in a section of law called 18 U.S. Code Section 922. One of those provisions, 922G8, concerns anyone subject to a court order in which they were found to be a threat to a domestic partner or child. Zaki Rahimi, an accused drug dealer in Texas whose partner obtained a restraining order in February 2020, is one such person. During an incident in Arlington, Texas, parking lot the previous year, recounted by federal government in court papers, Rahimi was accused of knocking the woman to the ground, dragging her to his car and pushing her inside, knocking her head on the dashboard. In the process, he also allegedly fired a shot from his gun after realizing that a bystander was watching. While the protective order was in effect, Rahimi was implicated in a series of shootings, including one incident in which he allegedly fired bullets into a house using an AR-15 style rifle, the federal government says. Rahimi faced state charges for the domestic assault and another assault against a different woman. He was prosecuted separately for violating the federal gun restriction law, and before the Supreme Court had issued its new gun rights ruling, argued that the case should be dismissed because of his Second Amendment right to bear arms. A federal judge rejected the claim, noting that the law had previously been upheld. On appeal, the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans initially reached the same conclusion. Then Bruin came. And of course, this is NPC News trying to argue and invalidate the entire Bruin decision, because it's mean, and it means that people can get the scary, scary AR-15 rifle. I want to talk about process for just a moment. Now, you are guaranteed your rights to be protected by the government, or you're supposed to be, I should say, by the Constitution of the United States, including your right to keep and bear arms, barring a conviction which would leave you to be considered to be a criminal lunatic in criminal lunacy. People who are crazy enough to go back out and rob a bank or shove somebody into a car or the such. Or a court ruling saying that you are officially a felon accused of a federal crime. And yes, even that's starting to stretch against non-violent felons. But violent felons fall under the criminal lunacy aspect of things. The problem with a court-ordered restraining order for domestic violence is the fact that anybody can file it, and it's typically rubber-stamped for purposes of safety. I don't necessarily believe that anybody who's beat his wife around should have access to a firearm. But with that being said, I can see where a system like this can be abused, especially in the face of so much activism in our country. When red flag laws started to come around, and the push started to come for red flag laws to be nationwide, and Red Flag Dawn actually got in and said, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Take the guns, run the conviction later. He actually said that on a campaign trail, and in several speeches as well after mass shootings. The former president, so many MAGA people religiously idolize, is a red flagger. But there was already talk, especially when red flag laws started hitting states, where some blue-haired teenager decided that she would post out on social media, oh yeah, hey, we have red flag laws in my state now. And it's about to get really, really interesting for that conservative uncle who loves his guns so much. There's already been talk and threats of the fact that they're going to misuse the situation. I don't know what the answer is here. And when I don't know what the answer is, I'm going to be the first person to always say it. Again, I don't think that a guy who just got done punching his wife around the kitchen because his dinner was cold needs to have access to that Glock. I don't think he's in the right state of mind to do so. But the gun enthusiast girlfriend who just got done saying, oh, you think that you're right about the Constitution and you think you're right about abortion? I'll show you. Help, he hit me, help. I don't think that's right either. Because both instances happen. And I would so much rather err on the side of caution towards rights. But again, I also know that Pete the Puncher has very, very little to stop him from turning around and pushing over that edge too. So I don't know what the answer is to this. I don't. I mean, it'd be easy for me to run to one side or the other, but again, I know that both situations happen. But I can tell you who doesn't need to have firearms. We will hold off on the Arkansas stuff until tomorrow. I'll actually put that over here. Oops, that's supposed to stay docked up here. We'll hold on to those till tomorrow, but we're going to talk about our Democratic friend Stacey Plaskett, because I think that makes a nice juxtaposition compared to what we just talked about. And by the way, it doesn't get struck on the Clips channel, so we can watch it. I know I wanted to wait and find out if it got hit on the Clips channel or not, and it didn't. So, from the New York Post, Democrat Stacey Plaskett says Trump needs to be shot in TV stumble over alleged mishandling of classified documents. From Josh Christensen, Delegate Stacey Plaskett of the Virgin Islands tripped over her tongue during a Sunday interview on MSDNC, saying the former president needs to be shot over his alleged mishandling of classified documents before quickly correcting herself to say he should be stopped. Having Trump not only have had the codes, but now having the classified information for Americans and being able to put that out there and share it in his resort with anyone and everyone who comes through should be terrifying to all Americans. You know what? Let's just listen to the exchange.
Trump not only have had the code.
Gotta back this up just a little bit and turn the other music off.
Having Trump not only have had the codes, but now having the classified information for Americans and being able to put that out and share it in his resort with anyone and everyone who comes through should be terrifying to all Americans, and he needs to be stopped. Of course, he's going to have his day in court. Let's remember that he was indicted by his peers, individual Americans who live in South Florida, a red state. They saw it enough that there was probable cause for him to bring this indictment and for him to stand trial. Having Trump.
So, is this a Freudian slip? Is this what she actually means? Was this put out there deliberately to try to get people's attention? The world may never know. Now, of course, she quickly corrected herself, but according to Fox News, she was quite literally slammed after accidentally saying Trump needs to be shot before quickly correcting herself. From Aubrey Spady. Democrat Virgin Islands delegate Stacey Plaskett appeared to accidentally say that the former president needs to be shot while discussing his classified documents investigation. Plaskett, who represents a non-voting U.S. territory, was criticizing Trump's handling of classified documents during a live segment on MSDNC on Sunday when she made the perplexing comment. Having Trump not only have the code, we heard that. He needs to be shot, she said, before quickly attempting to correct herself by adding stopped. The video immediately began circulating social media, with several Twitter users taking the comment seriously and calling for her removal from office, which is probably not a bad idea. Imagine the outrage if a Republican said this about a Democrat. Conservative communicator Steve Guest tweeted, "Can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot?" Don't you hate when your mouth says what you're really thinking? World Start Corporation President Jim Hansen tweeted. This is a direct threat to President Trump, and someone needs to investigate. Plaskett needs to be removed immediately, a Twitter user wrote on Monday. That's not a slip of the tongue. She's an adult. She should be able to handle public speaking with her position. Hashtag remove Plaskett. Ryan Fournier, finer of students for Trump, also posted the video and said, "Lock her up." So, yeah, I would definitely say that the Secret Service at least needs to be having a visit to this one here. But it'll never happen. It won't. But with that, we're gonna finish out for the day. Got a few things left to do for tomorrow. But the last thing that we do on Wednesday before we head out of here is we talk about something that kind of restores my faith in humanity, something I'm thankful for. Now, number one, I mentioned the No Gimmicks podcast at the beginning of every episode. So you guys should go back out and check out Brady Leonard, who used one of my questions on his listener mail segment today, asking what his favorite recipes are for exceptionally large deer, because we've had a little bit of a DM conversation. He and I talking about the fact that I do live close to one of the champion buck counties in the United States, where the biggest bucks live. And I grew up in that county too, so we've been having that DM conversation a little bit back and forth, so go check him out. But one of the things, and I talked a bit about this when we were talking about the economy and finance all the way back in the beginning of the stream, and that is the fact that I mentioned the fact that I'm still starting to feel a little bit tight in the wallet, even after pushing my yearly income up $12,000 overnight, pretty much. And by the way, also on deck to do it again next year. That's also possibly going to be coming down the pipe. But one thing that it's really tough to sit there and think to yourself, man, I like the fact that I was poor. You usually want to be successful throughout your life. But I'm always thankful for the fact that I got down to pretty much nothing and got close to homelessness. Part of that was fueled a little bit by the identity theft, but even that, I'm a little bit glad that happened. Now, we're facing down a recession. And in spite of the fact that when they start letting people go, I'm probably going to be at the bottom of the list that they start letting people go from. If they start letting people go from work, I'm probably going to be far, far to the bottom of that list just because of the work ethic and the things that I do while I'm at work. But with that being said, as inflation started to grow, I still spend like I only make $40K. And that's something I'm very, very happy about the fact that I learned. I mean, I've learned how to be satisfied and satiated on next to nothing. And I can even, doing a ketogenic diet is a little bit of a splurge almost. It's a little bit more expensive, I'll admit to it. A lot of the advocates for it will try to tell you that it costs exactly the same as eating the way that you do when you're buying cheap crap food and mac and cheese and cup of noodles. It's not. It's way more expensive. I know, I've lived it this is my third year doing it. So I've got the ability to go back and afford to go back and do that. But I also know, I look at things. I looked just the other day at a bed because I'm still sleeping on pallets right now. And I would like to have something a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more sustainable. But right now, number one, I've got to move it in and out of a bedroom in a very, very awkward shaped apartment before I buy a house again. In fact, I don't even want just a regular bed frame. I want to get a sleep number. But once again, that's going to be into the point of, okay, move it in and out of this place. Not to mention throwing another payment up. I qualified a couple months ago to go out and buy a brand new truck on credit And I actually can afford it. I can afford to take my monthly payment, my truck payment up enough to go out and buy a new truck. And I can buy a brand new one. I can afford it. I looked at one. They had the one that I want sitting at one of the local dealers in the color that I wanted, the configuration that I wanted, and with the engine that I wanted, just sitting there. But I looked at that and said, throwing that extra $150 a month, I can afford it. I can absolutely swing that much. But what is that going to do towards my ability to go out and buy a piece of property next year? It's going to be a detriment to it. I'm going to try to get by on what I have and keep my spending cut. Throw some more money into that bank account, and yeah, even throw some more money. Again, all your donations. I reminded you guys of this yesterday. Go into the new house fund. I threw another $5 in there for Mogwai last week because he threw a community sub out, and that's always appreciated, by the way. And if you throw a donation into the Rumble side or onto the Twitch side, that automatically goes in here. The DLive side, not so much, because I don't know the lemon exchange, and for whatever reason, I still can't get my lemons out of DLive. And I do have a fair amount of money saved up in DLive, by the way. I think on Friday I'm going to hit the chest. Just for you, Spartan. We'll see how much is in it, even. But I'm always thankful that I can, keep seeing some of these kids saying, oh, I need more, I need more, I need more. I could have stayed living on the exact same of what I was making at my last job. It would have been uncomfortable. I don't need more. I need the same. And it's kind of nice having a little bit of a nest egg in there in case I do need to go out and buy a heater. Like I had to when I first moved into this place, because the one that they had failed. And they did not have the time or resources to fix it because they were in the middle of also dealing with a major flood in one of their other properties. Because they had a water main break that exact same day. So I went out and threw $100 down on an infrared heater. For the small amount of space that I have, it works, but we're off on a tangent right now. My big thing that I'm thankful for is that I don't have to increase my spending as inflation goes up. I can make it on just the same. And I can fight off the urge to go back and try to improve some of my lot in life too. I can make it on what I have until I get to the goals that I want. Because I know a lot of millennials can't do that. They either had everything given to them, they expect everything to have at a moment's notice, or they were fiscally blessed at the very, very beginning of the crash, were able to keep their jobs, and now they expect to always be able to spend and keep up with the Joneses. A lot of people my age cannot just be satisfied on what they have. And I'm glad that I learned how to do that. I'm also glad that I didn't have to get as low as some of the other people out there to do so. I've heard stories of people who were picking cigarette butts up off the ground when they smoked and trying to get the last hits out of them because they were so poor. I'm glad I never got down that far. Although I would have seen that as a learning experience too. And with that, we're out of here. We're done. Let's throw the outro music up. It's like we had a big influx of people at the very end of the show. Thank you guys, by the way. Alright, we gotta kill this other music here. So, thank you everybody who came by and hung out, chatted in the live chat with us. It's been a great time. We got a lot done. We got a lot more to get done tomorrow, but we'll be back here for that. Come back and join me, 6 p.m. Central Time, for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. We'll be talking more presidential politics as we tick away at the stack of things that we have to go off there. We've got some environmental stuff to go on with that as well, and some business stuff. Plus tomorrow's things I like and things that I hate, and a few of the things that came both on the stack today and some things that are left over fit well into that category. Plus I rediscovered a new musical group that I liked years ago last night, so they're going to be on things that I like and things that I hate tomorrow as well. Come back and join me, 6 p.m. Central Time for that. As for now, we're going to head out of here. I'm going to go get some dinner. We're going to find somebody to raid over on Twitch. So if you're on Twitch, join me as we go back and watch. What we're going to watch tonight? What are we going to do? got one. Somebody playing Super Mario World. Maybe. I like that game. I know I usually find a follow one. We could do, let's do New Vegas with Cat Pants, actually, our new one over there. She seemed interested. She actually joined us over here, so we'll go find Cat Pants. Join me for that over on the Twitch side. We will see you then. Take care. Have a good night. Hug your family. Get some dinner. And enjoy the hot weather if you are fortunate enough to have it without storms right now. We will see you here tomorrow. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.